Welcome, everybody, to the Heartful of Hallmark podcast. I am here with the busiest guy I know in the Hallmark space today. He has 6 films releasing over the next, well, he's already had 2. He has 4 more releasing from now to the end of the year. He has written multiple films, including A Shoe-Axe Christmas, the Groomsman trilogy, and, of course, the Cherry Lane movies, which are releasing in December. So I have Rick Garman. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you so much for coming on. It's an honor to talk to you. Big fan of your work. Watched all your films, and I gotta say, you're one of the strongest writers that the whole entire genre has. Really,
Thank you. There's a lot of great writers out there. But I appreciate that.
So, with the Groomsman films,
yeah,
was this a pitch to you, or did you pitch this idea to the Hallmark Channel?
Actually, they came to me. So Jonathan Bennett and another person, they developed the idea. They took it to Hallmark, and along with when they got Tyler Hines on board and pitched to Hallmark, and Hallmark was like, yes, we need to do that. And then the person that Jonathan came up with the story with took a pass at the first script that became JB's movie, and then the other movies were sort of in limbo a little bit, and they came to me and they asked me to take them over. So I wound up rewriting the first movie. I wrote the second movie, which was Jonathan's movie. The third movie I did not write. Somebody else wrote that, but it has elements, obviously the same characters, and that sort of through line that we have seen in the first 2 movies that have already aired. The third movie debuts on Hallmark Plus tomorrow, Thursday, the 31st, on Halloween. The through line of the Runaway Bride, you'll get the conclusion of that in the third movie. But like I said, I didn't actually write it.
Okay. Have you seen all three films?
I've seen the first 2. I had seen the first 2 that I worked on before they aired. I got to see a producer's cut. I have not seen the third one. Again, since I didn't work on it, they didn't send it to me. So I'm going to be watching it tomorrow, just like everybody else.
Okay. So, what was your favorite scene in each of the 2 films that you wrote? What was the hardest scene for you as a writer to do?
Favorite scene and hardest scene. In the first movie, I think my favorite scene, I loved all the stuff with them out in the jungle. That was in the original script that came to me, and it actually made up most of the first draft of the script. Was them in the jungle. So sort of condensing that down and still keeping the spirit of fun of these 3 guys sort of stranded out in the woods. That was a challenge, but also a lot of fun. I also love I don't know why, it's just sort of old school comedy of the moment when when Pete believes that that Chelsea's gone. They're standing outside the hotel and believes that she's gone, and he's like, what should I do? Run after the cab? And they're like, yes, do that. And then he starts chasing, only to find out that she wasn't actually in the cab. It's sort of great it's kind of old school humor, but I think it always works. So that made me laugh. The second movie, Jonathan's movie, there's so much great stuff in that movie. I'm really, really happy with the way that turned out, and I'm very proud of it. But I love the Stop the Wedding scene, which is when Jonathan's character, Danny, runs in to stop Zach's wedding, but it's before the wedding, so there's nobody there.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, here's this big speech that I had planned, but the wedding isn't actually happening, and so I have to adjust it. The way, I like the words of it, of course, because I wrote it. But the way that Jonathan and Zach and Andrew played it was just stunning. Just broke my heart. I mean, it's just that has become one of my favorite scenes in any movie that I've ever written.
With some of your films, you have a really hard thing, right? As a writer, there's a group that is very hard to write for and do it in a respectful way. So doing these, how to word this, a gay film, right? How do you write this in a way? Do you take a once over and then a third over and rewrite till you think it's the best that it can be, or do they come to you and say, hey, we would like to take this a different way? And how did they come to you with this type of a story, and how did you adapt this in your mind?
So it started out as Jonathan's, Danny's story was because Danny's character is gay. So that's the way that the pitch came to me. I'm gay, and so it's not that hard to write gay romances. But the important thing I think about the way this movie is written, and the way that, for instance, Jonathan and Vincent Rodriguez's story in the first Cherry Lane movie, which continues in one of the future Cherry Lane movies, is that it's not about them being gay. You could take this. I mean, I think that the performances that these two actors did makes it unique and special. But you could replace either of those characters with a woman or two women, and it would be the same story. There was absolutely nothing in it about coming out or being conflicted because I'm in love with a man, or none of that stuff. That's not what this movie is about. It's about two best friends who realize they love each other, and it's sort of a universal story that can be told in any way. And so the important thing I believe about LGBT representation in media is that it isn't about the fact that the characters are gay. It's about that they're human, and then they just happen to be gay. That's just part of who they are, but it's not all that they are. And so I'm hoping that people can watch a movie with an LGBT couple at the forefront of romance. I'm told that it's the first time that a gay wedding was featured in a Hallmark movie, so that's kind of cool. I'm hoping that people can watch this and be as affected by it, and moved by it, and charmed by it, and laugh with it, as they do with any other Hallmark movie, because it has all the same classic elements, that all the other Hallmark movies have. It just has a couple that looks a little different. That's it.
So, moving on to the three other films. Last year, we had a film that was very different and very stacked. Those three stories in the first, the Cherry Lane films, right?
Yeah.
How did you write that? Was that a pitch? Because that was the most stacked story I've ever seen. And I followed it, but a lot of people got very just lost. So how did you write that one as a writer?
So yeah, that was my pitch to Hallmark. I'm surprised to this day that they picked that one. I had pitched it with a bunch of other ideas, and I thought, well, they're never going to do that one, and that's the one that they picked. And then even more surprised when they wanted to do three more. it has a very This Is Us kind of vibe to it. So, it's got different storylines happening in different times, and then you sort of find out how all the storylines are related to one another. Um, uh, I kept telling people about that movie. Here's the thing about Hallmark movies.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people put the channel on, and it sort of plays in the background. They watch the movies. A lot of people sit down and watch the movies.
Yep.
But a lot of times they're doing something else. They're checking their email. They're playing a game on their phone. They're talking to people in the living room. They're cooking. People are often doing other things while, and it's not just Hallmark movies. That's sort of TV in general now. It's very difficult to get somebody to sit down and actually pay attention.
Yeah.
And when I make this statement, I'm including a lot of movies that I've written in the past, the sort of old Hallmark, older Hallmark movies, much less so with the things that they do today. But you could sort of get away with that and not have to pay as much attention. You know what I mean? Because you could check your email and look up, and you sort of still knew where they were, right? It was the very traditional, very some people called it a formula, but it's a rom-com kind of a formula, right?
Yep.
With this movie, with Cherry Lane, you kind of had to pay attention. And I believe that I know that there was some feedback that some people got a little lost, some people got a little confused. I believe for most of those people, not all of those people, but I believe for most of those people, it was because they looked away, or they weren't paying attention during a critical moment that helped explain what was going on. So, like, if you didn't see the very last bit of the first act, which is the first chunk right before the first commercial, where it reveals, sorry, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the first movie, it's been a year, I can't help you anymore.
Exactly.
It's three different families who live in the same house at three different times.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the first act, you see the house three times. Here's 1973, here's 1999, here's 2023. And once that is explained, so we wanted to keep that secret until the end of the first act. But once you see that, then the rest of the movie makes sense. But if you miss that, then I understand why people could be confused by it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also heard that it was a movie that got some of the highest rewatches on DVR.
Yep.
Partly because people wanted to go back because they felt like they missed something, but also people, once they started seeing how the stories are all connected, they were like, oh, I need to go back and see if they did that right. And how they set that up right. And so, like, they went back and they're like, oh yeah, they did it. That's how that was the car. That was the same car in this year and that year. And that was the ornament that was in this story and the same story. Yeah, it's the same thing. So doing that story was, it was a little bit like I kept feeling like I needed one of those murder boards, with the red string going all over the place. And it got even worse when I had to do three more, because it's the three new Cherry Lane movies are the same house again from 1951 to 2024. And there are 9 new stories, so 3 in each movie, including a we see Jonathan and Vinny's story the following year. They're in 2024. We see Catherine Bell and James Denton's story the year before, 1998, which is when they first meet. So we get to learn how they met on Christmas Eve at the house. And then John Brotherton and Erin Cahill's story is, in the first movie, is when they're first moving into that house. In their movie, in the trilogy, the movie that their story is in, it's 8 years later and they're moving out of the house.
Okay.
So it's sort of a bookend of that particular story. But then there's 6 other stories. There's a couple that lived there in 1951 that was a doctor and his wife, and the doctor is getting ready to go off to Korea. There's a story in 1966 about a neighbor, a woman who lives at a neighbor's house, who used that house's address to enter a contest that a TV host comes and does a live broadcast on Christmas Eve, and she
Mhm.
wins the contest and has to convince the owner of the house to let her do it in the house, and they have to pretend they're married. And so it's like 60s variety show with a lot of hijinks going on. There's a story in 2015 of a woman whose sister was going to get married on Christmas Eve, but there's something wrong with the venue and they have to do it in the house. So there's all these other stories that are happening. And again, they're all connected. All the three stories in each movie are connected, and all of the stories in all three of those movies and the three original stories are all connected. And so as you're watching it, you see these little Easter eggs. There's all sorts of little things that if you're paying really close attention, you'll be like, oh, that's from the first movie, or hey, that was in the third movie, or so it's a really fun
hunt, so sort of.
Yeah, I mean, you can sit back and enjoy them. I mean, if you don't catch some of the Easter eggs, it doesn't remove your entertainment value at all. But again, as these things are revealed and how the different stories are connected, there's a lot of when the first movie, we had a premiere in New York, and so I got to watch it in a room with a lot of people, and the gasps that we heard when some of the big secrets were revealed, some of the big connections were revealed, was really cool. And I think there's a lot more of that in the second, third, and fourth movies.
So as a writer, sometimes they get to go on set, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get to go on set for any of these 4 films in the Cherry Lane films?
Unfortunately, no. I am insanely busy with writing lots of other movies, and I also have a stage company here in where I live in Savannah, Georgia. I'm in beautiful Savannah, Georgia, and it keeps me very, very busy. So I had wanted to go. I thought I was going to be able to make it up to Vancouver to the set of the Cherry Lane movies, but just couldn't swing it. And then it was even harder because the Groomsmen movies were filmed in Bulgaria and Greece.
Yeah.
And so, making it overseas, again, I really wanted to go, but I was unfortunately unable to make it. It's a bummer. I really wanted to go to Greece. I love Greece.
I've always wanted to go, and they did such a great job showing all these just beautiful areas that many people won't get to go to. One, just because the main audience is an older crowd. But then you have someone like me who fell in love with these at a very early age.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite scene from each of these 3 new films?
I haven't seen the producers' cuts of them yet, so I'm supposed to be getting those soon, I hope. But in terms of the writing of them, let's see. In the second movie that's coming out, that is probably there's a great scene between Jonathan Bennett and Vincent Rodriguez the third. I'm hoping it made the final cut. Where they sort of in their story, each of them is working on a surprise for the other for Christmas, and they're trying to keep it secret, hence the word surprise. But then the two of them run into each other, and they're trying to not let the other figure out what's going on, and it becomes Who's on First. I don't know if you get that reference. What Who's on First is a classic old Abbott and Costello routine.
Yep.
It becomes that kind of this circular dialogue that Jonathan and Vinny are so good at, and it's just like this really rapid fire back and forth. And again, if that made it into the final cut, then that should be a really fun scene. In the second movie, there's a great story in the second movie that takes place in 1960. That stars Benjamin Ayres and oh my gosh, I can't think of her name now. Why is my brain? She's been in a billion Hallmark movies.
Julie Gonzalo's in that one. Erica Durance is in that one.
Yes, Erica Durance. So yep. It's Benjamin Ayres and Erica Durance. They play a couple in 1960. His father has moved in with them, and they don't get along very well. And so there's still a little bit of romance with the husband and wife, but it's more about the father-son story.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime I get to tell a story that's a little bit different, because I've done so many of these, that's always exciting to me. So being able to tell a father-son story was really cool. And there's some really lovely moments, funny, very, very funny moments in there, but some really lovely moments as these two men, these two guys, in 1960, which makes the guy aspect of it even worse. Sort of try to come to terms with each other in a way that guys in the 1960s would have. So it's not a hug fest. It's like I love you, Dad. It doesn't work like that. So, but it's still it's lovely. And then and also in that movie, I think the whole romance between that, where you get to see how Catherine Bell and James Denton's characters meet, is just very, very sweet and funny. And then the third movie, I really like the full circleness, to invent a word, of John Brotherton and Aaron Cahill's characters moving out of the house, and how that story sort of wraps up. I'm not going to ruin anything, but have your tissues ready. That's all I'm saying.
So there's 4 of these now.
Mm-hmm.
I know you can't say, but do you have any ideas for a 5th, 6th, and 7th story if they come to you and want to do a 5th, 6th, and 7th film in the Cherry Lane series?
We could, yes. I have some ideas. The first. In the second movie, you get to meet the couple, as I mentioned, that lived the house in 1951. They were the very first people who lived there. Mm-hmm. And we see the owners in, I'm going to try to do this right, 1951, 1960, 1966, 1973, 81, 98, 99, 2000, 2003, 2015, and 2023 and 24. That's a lot of people who own this house over the course of 70 years. Mm-hmm. But there's gaps. There's time periods that weren't accounted for. Yep. Because this is the point's actually made in one of these movies about how a lot of people own this house over the years, but it's a house that seems to come into people's lives when they need it most. Mm-hmm. Not to say that it's a magic house or anything like that, but people have pivotal moments in their lives in this house that often put them in a position where they're moving on. So, like, some of them they're straight ahead romances, and you have people who meet and fall in love, and then a couple of years later they move, they have a family and they move someplace else, or a job thing comes up or whatever. Anyway, so there are gaps in that 70-year timeline where we could have other stories. The other thing that these movies do in 2, 3, and 4 is keep in mind, this is the house that has been featured so far is number 7, Cherry Lane. Mm-hmm. But the title of the movies are Christmas on Cherry Lane. Exactly. And we have seen a couple of the other houses that are on Cherry Lane, and we see more of those houses and meet more people in 2, 3, and 4. So if the stories were to continue, which there is absolutely no plan for that right now, but if they were to continue, we could continue telling some stories in this house and tell more stories with people we've already met, the same way we're taking the same characters from the first movie and including them in the future ones. But we could also set stories in other houses that are, and again, making those connections between the people you've already met, and how this entire, the thing that it's a line in the first movie about, and what these movies are really about, is especially at Christmas, we all celebrate in very different ways, mm-hmm. but it connects us as a people. Even people who are not, who don't celebrate Christmas as either their personal faith or just for whatever reason. Um, you can't escape Christmas.
No.
So Christmas connects people in a way that nothing else does, and so those connections, the way that we as people are all connected, often in ways that we don't know. That's what these movies are really about, and I would love to be able to continue to sort of deepen and create more of those connections. I decided I'm Christmas on Cherry Lane is the Hallmark version of the Marvel character universe. It's the MCU.
Yeah.
You're going to meet some of these characters in other places. There's going to be a mystery of one of them someday.
So
that's my idea, not Hallmark's. So the people at Hallmark are probably sitting at their desk going, "Oh God, why is he saying that?"
Oh my God, Rick, no.
They know that I'm kidding, and again, my idea, not theirs.
So speaking of them, do you have anything in the future that you can spoil or hint at for any of the fans? Any new films for the next year that you are writing or have written or will be?
Not a lot. I just finished a rewrite on a movie that I can't talk about, but it's got an exotic locale. I will say that. Very fun romance in an exotic locale that I think they're targeting that for first quarter, sometime winter in 2025. But that's all I've got right now. The thing about Hallmark movies is that they often sort of pop up very fast and then get turned around very fast. So as of right now, I will have one movie on in 2025, but that could wind up being another 5 after that. Who knows? I think the only reason that I had known about these movies so early was because of some of the stuff with the writer's strike and other stuff that popped up. These had a little bit longer of a lead time, but often they pop up very quickly and then suddenly they're on the air. I've told the story often. One of the movies that I wrote was called Royal New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And between the time they told me yes, start writing the script, and it was on the air, was 11 and a half weeks. So somehow or other, I wrote that movie. They did all the pre-production, casted it, scouted all the sets, got all the costumes, did everything, filmed it, did all the post-production, and got it on the air in like 11 and a half weeks. It was insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
11 and a half weeks.
I might have a movie. I might have a movie on in January that I haven't even heard about yet. So who knows?
So out of all the films, have you ever been on one of these sets?
Oh, yeah.
And what was it like with each star that you got to see do your scenes?
Well, it's always weird to me. So I visited 5 or 6 of them. I went to Christmas in Homestead, which was my very first Hallmark movie. That was filmed in Dahlonega, Georgia. I lived in LA at the time, so it wasn't like I was even in the same state, but I went there. I visited, I went to the set of Frozen in Love with Rachel Lee Cook. Yep. I went to, Christmas in Evergreen, which was done in Vancouver. And then I went to Shoe Addicts Christmas, which was shot in Winnipeg. And I would say, we'll talk about Shoe Addict because it remains one of my. It's so very hard to pick, which is my favorite movie. I don't think I have one favorite, but that's in my top 3 or 4. Shoe Addicts. again, because it was a little bit different than your sort of standard rom-com. Candace Cameron Bure was very, very kind and generous to me, always. Some stuff happened, but again, she was always very, very, and remained. I wrote more movies for her at that other channel that shall not be mentioned.
Yeah.
So I've written more movies for her, and she's always been very kind and gracious, and just a very a decent human being. Luke McFarlane, I only got to meet for a few minutes, just because of the most of the time that I was there, he wasn't in the scenes. Most of what they shot while I was there was in the department store when Candace's character meets Jean Smart, Jean Smart's character. But I did get to meet Jean Smart, who is an icon. I'm of the age where designing women was a huge thing, and many of the roles that she's been in since then. They were filming the department store scene where their two characters first meet, and a few other scenes in the department store. And they had created a department store in this big empty, it had been a train station at one point in its life, but they had created a department store in there, including a furniture section. And so whenever I visit a set, I get there, and for the first day, I'm like, this is crazy. This, all this action and sets and costumes and people and running around and all this thing happened because of something that came out of my head. It's a very weird thing, and it's very hard not to get a little geeky about it, to be, very like, oh, this is really cool. But I will say that the process of making movies is one of the most god-awful boring things on the face of the earth. It is slow. It is tedious, long days. Anybody who thinks that making movies is glamorous, there certainly is an element to that, but the actual making of movies, it's just torture in my opinion. But so that first day was really cool, and then the second day when they were filming in the department store, I also had another script I was working on. So I took my laptop over and was sitting on the fake furniture section on a couch, and I would sort of run over and watch a take and then go sit and work some more. Well, at some point fairly early in the day, I had met her very briefly the day before, Jean Smart. I hear, "Mr. Garman," and I look up and there's Jean Smart, and my first thought is, Jean Smart knows my name. I mean, I know we met, but it was very brief and hi, and we took a quick picture, and that was it. Jean Smart knows my name and knows me by weird. And she sat down on the couch, and we talked for the better part of that day. She would go shoot a scene, and she'd come back, and we talked and we laughed, and she told stories of. She's just one of my favorite human beings on earth, one of my favorite actresses, but also one of my favorite human beings. And that's a memory I'm going to keep with me for the rest of my life. But in every instance, one of the things, I was just having this conversation with Corey Cott, who is, he's been in a bunch of stuff on Broadway. He just was in the lead in the Huey Lewis and the News musical called Heart of Rock and Roll. He was in Newsies. He's done a lot of stuff. He's in one of the new Cherry Lane movies. Okay. And in fact, he plays the doctor in 1951. But we were chatting, and he had not done a lot of Hallmark stuff. And he was like, everybody I met was so nice. And I'm like, yes, that it is incredible to me. I've been doing these for 8 years. I've written 30 some Hallmark, over 40 total. And all the people that I meet are just the nicest human beings on the face of the earth. Like all the development people at Hallmark, the publicity people at Hallmark, everybody you meet at Hallmark is just fantastic. And then you meet all the people who are in the movies. Ashley Williams, one of the nicest humans on earth. Seriously, just one of my favorite humans. Rachel Lee Cook, just the sweetest. Erin Cahill, John Brotherton. I mean, all these people that have no, I write movies, but I'm the guy that, writer, who cares about the writer, have always been so kind and so generous and so friendly with me, and it's really remarkable the team that they have put together. There is a reason that a lot of the actors that you see in these movies are in a lot of the movies, and it's part of it's because they're popular with audiences, but another big part of it is that they're wonderful people to work with.
Yep.
If I won't name names, but have been a couple of people who've been in some of my movies that you never saw again. And that's because they weren't great to work with. So they've done a really good job of creating Hallmark as a family. It's a really incredible, it's an incredible thing that they've done. And I'm very happy
with this genre, right? What keeps you coming back? Well, first off, that's a dumb answer. Well, a dumb thing. One, because it's working.
Yeah.
Two, you love to write, but what keeps you in this space? Is it just
they keep asking, which is cool. I don't. I'm a bit of a unicorn, especially as a writer, in that. Yes, I actively go out and pursue jobs and make pitches and things like that. But a lot of times, a lot of the projects that I've worked on, they've come to me, and so that's a great position to be in. People who want to come and keep giving you money to do something that you enjoy doing, can't go wrong with that. But here's the thing. I've said this in other interviews, but I think it bears repeating. I know that these movies, people make fun of them. You see the memes, you see the parodies of them on Saturday Night Live and all that other stuff.
Yep.
But the bottom line is that these movies make people happy. People enjoy watching. They're comfort food. They can watch these movies. They know that nobody's going to die unless they're watching one of the mysteries, but there's somebody you don't know and don't care about. Nobody's going to die. You know that the couple's going to wind up together in the end, and that it's going to end in a kiss and all that kind of stuff. They make people happy. And I have written, as I mentioned, over 40 movies for Hallmark and other channels. And my movies have been seen by tens of millions of people. And who gets to say in their life that the job that they have done has made tens of millions of people happy? Who gets to say that? It's a very, very small group of people, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. Are there other things that I do and would like to do? Yeah, I run a theater company here in Savannah. There's other projects outside of the Christmas movie, rom-com, TV movie world that I'm working on. But I think I will always do this because I feel like in a world gone mad, having this sort of safe space, I think it's important. The fact that I can do work that has brought a little bit of joy to people, that's what keeps me coming back.
And with that, I was just at a nursing home yesterday. I've been there the past two days, and well, you walk down this one hallway, and they always have one of two things on the huge, gigantic screen. I mean, that screen in there is the biggest TV I've ever seen in my entire life. I guarantee it's 95 inches.
Yeah.
And it's always either these films or Andy Griffith's show.
Yeah.
One of these two things is always on, no matter how many times I walk by. And it's this big group of older people.
Mm-hmm.
And well, there's one more thing, but that's for a little bit later in the story. So we walk in, and it's just this group of old people, big smile, and then we find out they all have Alzheimer's. So this is a safe space for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let alone My mom was in that same area, the in the other wing, because she broke her hip, and so two years ago we we walk in there, and my mom gives me a call about 8:30 at night, and we are a wrestling fan. We love the wrestling scene, so multiple times each week. Well, we didn't know this, but one nurse walked in, and she says to my mom, "You too?" And my mom goes, What? Apparently, everybody in that building watches either the Hallmark movies, Andy Griffith, or the wrestling stuff. It's a big family.
Wow. All right.
And she goes, "I've never seen a mixed group. They love a clean story, a 60s fun show, and then people just fighting and being the crap out of each other."
Well, I will say that there's something that those three things have in common, which is that the stories are clear. It's fairly clear who the good guys and the bad guys are. I mean, in most Hallmark movies, most movies of that genre, there aren't really bad guys. They're just people who are kind of misguided, and then they often learn their lesson, which is very similar to what you may have seen in the Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. And in wrestling, yeah, there are good guys and there are bad guys, but it's always pretty clear. It's a story. It's a well-crafted, fairly straight ahead story. And while I think that I am a fan of, and I certainly believe that there's space in the world for darker, more complex story shows with stories. I mean, Ozark is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. One of the darkest shows ever made. Pitch black show with a very twisted storyline. I think there's certainly room in the world for that. But today you look at things like Ted Lasso, and you look at Abbott Elementary. A lot of the trend these days is toward sort of more optimistic, more
warm stories.
Warm stories, which is certainly what Christmas and TV movies often are. Certainly what the Andy Griffith Show was. And in a way, wrestling. Yeah, people are beating the crap out of each other, but again, you have the heroes and you have the villains, and so it's really easy to figure out who to root for. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even if you want to choose to decide you want to root for one of the villains, but so yeah, I get that, and I also get why both of my parents had dementia in the last few years of their lives and were in facility. Well, my father was in a facility like that. Which is why we didn't mention the sixth movie that I wrote this year, which was called Falling Together with Ashley Williams and Paul Campbell, was on a few weeks ago, which had an element, a sort of a B story that dealt with Alzheimer's. She volunteered for a walk to end Alzheimer's, and we worked with the Alzheimer's Foundation on that film. So it was an honor to be able to work with that. But I understand why my father, I gave him for his room a poster of one of my movies, and in a frame. And anytime one of the nurses or anybody else came in his room and saw it, it was just like, that's all that they could talk about. And my father would sort of come alive as he was able to talk about his son who wrote these movies.
So steering away from your films, just a few more things. What is your favorite film of all time?
Come on. I'm terrible at questions like that. I can never pick one. I'm a TV, and I'm more of a TV junkie than I am a movie junkie. But I am in all forms of entertainment junket. I binge watch television. I watch so much stuff. My favorites change all the time, a lot of times based on my mood. But My all-time, I got to throw a few at you. It would probably be, wow, this is a broad cross section, isn't it? The ones that are popping into my head are Alien and
Phenomenal.
Aliens, the first one and the second one. 9 to 5, Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, Dolly Parton. Almost a perfect movie. Uh, and I would say something along the lines of like, yeah, I'd have to go with Princess Bride.
That is the ultimate perfect film. That if you want any genre, it's pretty much in there.
Yep, yep, agreed. It's one of the best. So again, I have wide and varied tastes, and it's the same thing in television. You know, I loved everything from Ozark, as I mentioned, to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, one of my all-time favorite shows, to oh god, it's just going right out of my head. Buffy, Ozark. What's another one the new one with Gene Smart, Hacks, is just a brilliant show. Such a brilliantly written show. Anything with good writing, good characters, I'm usually in. So.
And Hacks sweeps all the Emmys, all the Golden Globes, which I mean, she's Jean Smart. She swept, and that show, I'm looking forward to the new season. When they did the Emmys just a couple months ago, they said they were shooting the new season right after that, and I'm like, wow, you just aired that last episode.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah, I cannot wait. Very exciting.
So what shows have you watched in the past month, and what shows out soon are you looking forward to?
Let's see. I just finished the new season of The Lincoln Lawyer, which is addictive. It's not always fantastic, but it's addictive. It's a show that here's the warning about The Lincoln Lawyer, and this happened every season. Is that large truck outside? Sorry. Here's the thing. I'll start that sentence again in case you want to edit that out. Here's the thing about The Lincoln Lawyer is that all 3 seasons, you can watch the first 4, maybe 5 episodes of the 10 episodes that are on each season, and you'll be able to watch an episode, maybe 2, and then go to bed. Mm-hmm. You watch another episode, during lunch, whatever, and walk away from it. You get to that 5th, 6th episode, you might as well just face the fact that you're going to be sitting there through the end of it. Somewhere in the middle of every season, something happens that turns it, and you're like, okay, I gotta keep watching. So I was up until 4:00 in the morning watching the last 4 or 5 episodes. So it's very compelling TV, and some really good performances. I love Becky Newton, I think is the actress's name. She was on Ugly Betty. Anyway, I just finished that. I just finished the latest season of Only Murders in the Building, which is, not only do you have Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez, who are all fantastic, but the guest stars they have on this season: Meryl Streep, Molly Shannon, Zach Galifianakis, Eugene Levy. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But I actually posted this to my friends. But you know who killed it this season? Eva Longoria. Eva Longoria. I think she stole the whole season. She was so funny in this show. Anyway, so I just finished that. And some of the new shows have started up again. The new seasons of things. Abbott Elementary is back on. But I have some standard go-tos. If I sit, if I have 20 minutes and I don't have time to go through a full hour-long show or pay attention to something new, I will sit and watch an episode of The Golden Girls.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. I still laugh out loud at that show. I've seen them all 50 times, and I still laugh out loud every single episode. So
every single episode. Some of my shows that are like that now, my all-time favorite thing ever is Friends. It's warm. It's a long show, and no matter how many times I've seen one scene, it's just continuous, which it's been 1 year since Matthew Perry left,
Yeah.
sadly.
Yeah.
But
I had a friend. She passed away many years ago, but we always used to say, and I continue to say to this day, you can compare everything in life to an episode of Friends.
mm-hmm.
I have in my bedroom a light switch that is connected to nothing. I've tested. I've gone to and so I'm convinced that when I flip it, it's turning on somebody else's TV in the other room.
Yep.
I there have been so many. I had the smoke alarm that would not stop beeping no matter what I did, and like I was beating it with a stick, and then a spider crawled out of it. It was like so ridiculous, but it kept going off, just like the scene with Phoebe. So you can compare everything in life to an episode of Friends. So
everything.
Yeah.
Right now, I am going through the third season of Ted Lasso.
Wonderful show.
So warm.
Yep.
It makes you laugh, but it can make you cry like that.
Absolutely.
And
the storyline about the character, I think it's in the third season with the player that winds up coming out. I don't know if you've gotten to that part or not yet, but that's a different element of telling LGBT stories. It is about a player, about a human being. That storyline is about him being gay, but it's because of the world that they're in, that he had to keep that secret. And the way that they work through that is perfect and beautiful and lovely. It was one of the best handlings of that ever.
And I'm a very easy guy. I love to sit down, eat, and watch something just mindless. So I love all my my doctor shows and a sitcom, but I love to watch a good episode of, say, MasterChef or Hell's Kitchen.
Okay.
But not only because I'm a cook and I like to go, you put peas in that, or you don't know how to cook a steak, but you're a head chef at your restaurant.
Right.
Good idea. But that's just me. But hey, new show's out soon. The new episode, the new season of Shrinking started, which is, I'm looking forward to that. I still haven't started yet. Next year is Silos on Apple Plus. The second season of that's like a sci-fi show.
Oh yeah, no, I haven't watched that one.
It's good. It's just you gotta pay very close attention because there's so many things in there that if you miss one name, it's completely out of your head.
Yeah.
But
I know that they're starting. Yes. Apple TV. That's on Apple, right? Silos is on Apple. Yeah, they've got the new season of Severance is coming out, and then they're doing a new season of Hijack. If you haven't watched Hijack, that is genius.
I've been looking forward to that, and that's probably be my next one. That thing looks intense, and Idris Elba.
Really God,
he's always a beast. He's always a beast.
It is almost literally a grip the edges of your seat kind of show. I mean, it's like, oh, what's going to happen? Which is that's rare on to be able to sustain that. So certainly to do it at all, but to sustain it over multiple episodes, it's genius.
And then the new one that I am salivating over is the new Dune series.
Oh, okay.
Dune Prophecy. I mean, if anybody hasn't seen Dune Part 2, those writers, oh my God. I don't know how they did that. Dune is a story that was said never could be adapted well.
Yeah.
The way they're crafting this world, I don't know how they did it, but it's like a new age of Star Wars, sort of.
Yeah.
But
I've adapted several books into Hallmark movies, which is a completely different thing. But if you as a fan of a book and then you're a fan of the movie, that's a Herculean task because most of the books that I've adapted, we wind up throwing out most of the book and keep it. Shoe Addicts Christmas was a book
Yeah.
But the movie is much different than the book is. Much different.
So for the final two things, what is your favorite Christmas film of all time, or just some of them? Some of them, maybe like five or six of your all time ones that you watch every year.
I have said this before in other interviews. I'm not actually much of a Christmas fan, which is weird because I write Christmas movies. But for me and a lot of the people who are in this particular industry, Christmas is actually in July or June, not
Yeah.
Christmas in July, the stunt, but Christmas is often in May or June and for me earlier, because I'm writing Christmas movies. I rarely write a Christmas movie when it's actually Christmas.
Yep.
I'm writing them, when it's 98 degrees outside, and then they're shooting them when it's 98 degrees outside, which is weird. So often by the time we get to Christmas, I'm kind of Christmased out because I've been dealing with it. But that doesn't mean I don't like Christmas movies. And I would say a few of my favorites are Love Actually. I would say I'm gonna have to say it. Die Hard. It's a Christmas movie. Don't argue with me. It is a Christmas movie.
I've had so many people on, and I'm sorry, it's a Christmas movie because it takes place at a Christmas party on
And
Christmas Eve.
but it's more than that. Is that there are Christmas through lines throughout the entire movie? He dresses one of the bad guys up and writes "ho ho ho," bad word, on there. And there's Christmas music that plays in a lot of different scenes. It's a Christmas movie. And then I think you have to go with a Christmas Story. I mean, how do you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
We'll leave it at those three.
Okay. And finally, what is your favorite? I'm not sure how to word this question properly. Okay. What is your favorite type of story to tell? Is it a royal film? Is it like a Cherry Lane with a lot of just weaving stories? What's your favorite type of a script to write for the Christmas genre as a whole?
For the Christmas genre as a whole, I would say, for me, it's anything that has anything that has characters that I can make interesting.
Okay.
For me, it starts and ends at the characters. You can take one of the reasons that a lot of Christmas movies, a lot of the rom-coms, a lot of them have storylines that aren't maybe breaking barriers, is because you can write deep, rich characters in similar settings.
Yes.
And so as long as it's got really interesting characters, and the characters often come alive for me. I wrote a movie last year called Notes of Autumn with Luke McFarlane and Ashley Williams.
Phenomenal.
And there was,
great movie. That was one of the best fall films I've ever seen.
I really enjoyed that.
Love that movie to death.
But the scenes where he's a writer and he's typing, and then you see the characters come alive, played by Kevin and Pascal, who I didn't know that they were doing, because that was shot during the writer's strike. I didn't know that they were doing those roles until I saw it on the air, and I just screamed, because I've done 3 movies with them. So I immediately sent them an email. I'm like, you didn't tell me. Anyway, but that happened. So that's a little bit of my world, in that I'll be writing something, and then it's like I'm sort of seeing it in my head, and then the character will just turn and go, no, that's terrible. No. So anytime the characters sort of come alive and can become interesting and have interesting points of view or interesting stories to tell, that's what I want to do. And anything that's a little bit different, anything that's we can take and put a little bit different spin on it. That's the kind of stories that I like to write, and hopefully do a decent job at.
Yes. And thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope to have you on very, very soon for your next films, and maybe for more of Cherry Lane.
Well, you never know. You never know what might happen. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Cherry Lane, the movies debut. Well, you've got the third Groomsman movie, October 31st, and then the 3 Cherry Lane movies are December 5th, 12th, and 19th on Hallmark Plus.
And as always, guys, like, subscribe, but I can't end this quite yet, because we have something very, very exciting happening with Mr. Benjamin Ayers. He created a small little thing called RU, and they have a 2-year anniversary birthday, sort of. So I just want to say happy birthday to RU, to all of our fans and all of the friends and everybody. Happy birthday, and thanks for joining us. And I hope to do this for many, many more years. Buy your merchandise down below and tell them that we sent you. And as always, guys, keep your heart full of Hallmark.